It's the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome! Hey, everybody! Welcome in. My name is Chris, and this show officially has Super Bowl fever, but we are taking penicillin. Hello there, you wonderful yacht possums. How are you today? Thank you so much for listening. I'm taking a break from my life as a full-time fiction writer to make a podcast. I kid, but truly that is mostly what I've been doing these days. Get up really early, eat my little breakfast, go to a coffee shop, and write my little sentences for like 4 hours. And after that, some football thoughts for sure. Also go to the gym, maybe have dinner with a friend, or maybe with the possum's friends. Rinse and repeat. The football novel is done, and I am pretty well committed to getting it out to you no matter what by August, so look forward to that. The one I'm writing right now is the next one, and it's about chess, so that's been fun. It's a funny book. It better be funny. I'm trying to make it funny. We will see. But I am also, of course, thrilled to check in with you about football. This is our final Thursday show for a month. And that's traditional. It's been that way for years. I will take the next 3 weeks off from the Thursday show and then come back and do a couple of shows about NFL free agency, which is always fun, and then a couple more weeks off, and then it's NFL draft coverage. Bless people's hearts who are desperately casting around for something to talk about and having hour-long debates about draft prospects in early February. Couldn't be me. But, of course, if you're in the yacht club, you know that we will keep making that show. It's been coming out on Mondays. It's mostly going to be early in the weeks, I think. We have some fun topics coming up. There definitely was football in this past Monday's show. Andy Behrens and I previewed the Super Bowl from a football perspective. And then we did a deep dive into the rookie tape of Jackson Dart. Had a good conversation about him. This coming Monday, I'm sure we'll review the Super Bowl, and we'll do another Film Futures or whatever it's called, and on from there. For sure, we have some non-football guests booked for that show too, but we'll keep doing film study, other fun football topics. So if you'd like to keep hearing me and Andy even while the Thursday show is off for a bit, you can find out how to do that. Join the Yacht Club. Today's show notes has some information, and also you can just go to harrisfootball.com. What's going on right now in the NFL, other than the Super Bowl, is, well, it seems like all the head coaching jobs are filled, with Mike LaFleur taking his failed stint as Jets offensive coordinator and his last name and getting hired in Arizona. Todd Monken, who seemed like an okay coordinator when Lamar Jackson was going supernova, but the moment he wasn't, I don't know, you Ravens fans out there, did you think Monken was really tearing it up with the Ravens last year? He's the new Browns head coach. And then Clint Kubiak, I felt like I was the only one saying nice things about him last summer. I thought the Saints offense in 2024 was pretty frisky until everyone got hurt. Well, now everyone loves him. He'll be the offensive coordinator of the Seahawks one last time on Sunday, and then turn into the head coach of the Vegas Raiders. Rooney Rule, pretty farcical. The coaching ranks in the NFL getting even paler. I can't say I think that's a good sign. It's also a topic, longer topic for another day. And then, some of these assistant hires, these same dudes that just go round and round. Nathaniel Hackett for offensive coordinator in Arizona. Buddy, that is wild. Do we not remember Nathaniel Hackett in Denver? I probably have hour-long clips of me talking about him in Denver. Frank Reich as coordinator of those Jets. And Matt Nagy is the offensive coordinator for the Giants. On Monday, Paywall Andy and I were lamenting that it seemed like the Giants offensive coordinator gig was going to come down to either Brian Callahan or Cliff Kingsbury. How is Matt Nagy somehow worse than that? Get ready for 700 screen passes. Matt Nagy, who Andy Reid couldn't say enough nice things about as he was throwing him out of the building so he could get Eric Bieniemy back in. Just a lot of retreads. I know people get worried. Wait, I never heard of Declan Doyle calling plays for the Ravens or Sean Mannion for the Eagles. And And I don't know, we don't get to sit in those interviews. I have no idea if those guys are good hires or not. But compared to like Drew Petzing to the Lions or Bobby Slowick to the Dolphins, I just feel like we've been on those rides fairly recently. I can't wait to hear the Seahawks when they sign Arthur Smith to be their offensive coordinator. Hopefully not. I mentioned the Eagles. I think you know that I don't do a lot of rumor chat on this show. Let's read this one article this one guy wrote, maybe clickbait, and then we're going to take it as a serious point of debate. That's the formula for the shouty shows on TV. Tends not to be what I do on here. But I mentioned the Eagles just a moment ago. This is just an entry point to wonder about something that I know you've already heard me wonder about. A beat reporter for The Athletic named Zach Berman did a mailbag segment in a column for his readers, and he made some waves, and he's been aggregated. Congratulations, Zach, because he said that if he had to predict it today, he would predict that A.J. Brown would not be back in Philly in 2026. And from his perspective, it wasn't the normal beat reporter nonsense about cap jail, and like, good for Zach Berman. He said, yeah, no, this player seems really unhappy here. And 2026 is the last year Brown has guaranteed money left, but it's a huge amount of guaranteed money. It's $29 million guaranteed, cash on the barrelhead. Forget the cap. The cap is crap. Teams, they can make it work. Cash, they do not. The under normal circumstances would not be thrilled to be paying that amount of money. And I'm sure that they're thinking, do we want to really pay this dude $29 million a year? Under normal circumstances, they would just approach the player for a renegotiation. They would kick a bunch of the cash down the road if he was a happy player, if it was working. That would also coincidentally fix some cap problems and wind up with more actual dollars in A.J. Brown's pocket. If the relationship with the player was good, this is probably what they would do. And never say never. If they are willing to tack enough money on, if Sean Mannion talks a good game, if things calm down, absolutely, of course, it could still happen. A renegotiation could happen. But you and I have eyeballs, and we know that no matter what the numbers say, it was not working for the second half of the season. And Brown hated that offense. And personally, I'm sure he likes Jalen Hurts very much as a guy. But give him some truth serum. Would anybody be shocked to hear that he'd like to play with someone who throws with better timing? And add all of this up, and that's where Zach Berman's mailbag opinion is coming from. Do the Eagle players actually believe that a new coordinator is going to change the ills that plagued that offense, despite all that talent? I don't think they do. All you read are quotes that say, actually, we thought Kevin Patullo's system was basically the same as Kellen Moore and basically the same as everyone. This is just our system. And I think what gets left unsaid is this is what our quarterback is and is capable of, which doesn't mean he stinks. As a Super Bowl winning quarterback, you can be pretty good at some things, but bad at a couple of things and still be a very good quarterback. But anyway, the notion of A.J. Brown being a massive domino that could fall and really change things personnel-wise across the NFL, it adds enough potential spice to the offseason that, I wanted to talk about it again here. I'm not a reporter. I do not have sources. If you asked me to make a bet, I would also probably bet A.J. Brown is not on the Eagles next year. And then it becomes a fun game of wondering where he will go. And also if he'll sign a new contract with that new team to make the cash and then therefore the cap situation more palatable. But cash is what actually matters. And if that's a requirement that, he wants to go someplace where, it's a better quarterback situation, that would eliminate a good portion of the league. Like it's, hard to say, sure, go ahead and trade me to the Browns or the Dolphins, and I will be glad to rework my deal and take some of the cash away or spread it out or whatever. I don't imagine that would be on the table, to be honest. I've seen a lot of Browns chatter about getting A.J. Brown. I don't think it would wind up happening. Maybe I'm wrong. A team like the Bills? Now. I don't know if I think Joe Brady's great, but I would like to see Josh Allen with A.J. Brown. That would be really cool. The Ravens, we like Zay Flowers. He's entering year 4. By May, the Ravens have to decide whether to spend big on his 5th-year option. I think $28 million, or maybe they do a new contract with him. But yes, that would be a good spot as well. How about the Patriots? I'll say it. I said it on the show before. The Footy Pajamas, they need an upgrade in receiver talent. They are also a notoriously cheap organization. But maybe, especially if they lose on Sunday, Stephon Diggs has legal problems. He's no guarantee to be back. Mike Vrabel drafted A.J. Brown. Anyway, as always, the one thing we don't do is say, there's no way the Eagles would ever trade A.J. Brown. The salary cap hit would be too big. Why, that would be the 4th largest dead cap hit ever. Yes, you are bad football analysts are going to say that, but you're too smart to believe it. And in fact, if you're the Eagles, you'd be getting out from under that huge balloon cash payment. Zach Berman, the guy covering the team, someone who is way more plugged in than I am, just told us if he had to guess, Brown is gone. Does that sound like someone who's been browbeaten by team employees that they would never dare take on a cap hit? Does not. Anyway, it would be seismic. I would have to imagine it would happen before the draft. And the cost, probably not a first rounder. Probably, that's a huge contract that you'd have to work out. Usually those guys don't cost a first rounder. Maybe it's a second rounder. Maybe it's a first rounder. I don't know. But I think it could happen during the summer still. The cap hit is different in the summer, if it after June 1 or whatever. But I would think the Eagles would want that pick now because for this draft, so then they could draft a receiver. Anyway, we might know answers to all this by April.
Today's kickoff.
Okay, on today's show, we're doing a couple of things that should be pretty fun. First up, we will have a Film Futures, or whatever it's called, on the first season for Buccaneers rookie receiver Emeka Egbuka. I've gone back and watched a whole bunch of his 2025 tape, all of it actually, and I will tell you what I think. And then my guest will be Matt Landis from the Props and Hops podcast, and Matt is going to talk through the Super Bowl from a wagering perspective with me, which he's done for several years running right now. It's always quite fun to talk to Matt. I think it's going to be great. I really do. Thank you so much for listening today. We are brought to you again by the most delicious and convenient bread and pasta and pastries you're going to find at home. It's Wild Grain, the first bake from frozen subscription box. It's like having an artisan bakery in your freezer to chase away the winter chill. I knew I was going to be sponsored by Wild Grain this week. I just made a sourdough loaf last night to have with dinner. You gotta try it. It goes from freezer to oven 25 minutes later. It's as good as anything you'll get fresh at a bakery. Incredible. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And if you try it, I think you'll be thrilled. Fully customizable boxes. If you love cinnamon rolls, snickerdoodles, Belgian waffles, man, Wild Grain is so good. It's a great time to stay in and enjoy Wild Grain, and I can get you $30 off your first box and free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/Harris to start your subscription. Could not recommend it more. You'll love it. $30 off your first box and free croissants in every box at wildgrain.com/Harris, or check out using the code Harris.
It's time for Film Futures, or whatever it's called.
I ain't happy, my team is bad, my season has been a drag, I'm hopeless, but not for long. Film Futures is coming on, I ain't happy.
That's right, it is in fact time for Film Futures, or whatever it's called, the segment everybody loves so much, I guess. I think you like it, in which I will go back and watch a whole bunch of film on a young player and tell you what I think. Remember way back when Emeka Egbuka was the strong betting favorite to be the offensive rookie of the year? I believe it was the month of October. Remember that by the end of the year, was he even a finalist for that award? Which, that's not great. From week 8 onward, Egbuka had 73 targets and he had 32 catches. That is very bad. And it's, without watching the film and I'm not watching Emeka Egbuka in a vacuum when I'm watching these games throughout the season. I'm just going, hey man, doesn't have a lot of catches. I don't see him a lot. And when I do see him, it's not going great, but I don't have a sense of it. And that's why the film is good. For the first 7 games of the season, Egbuka had 55 targets and 31 catches. He had 1 fewer catch on 18 fewer targets the first 7 weeks of the season. And that's probably all the stats you're going to get out of me because, you can look up the stats on the internet yourself. And if you had Egbuka in a fantasy league, you already are well aware. As of week 7, Egbuka was fantasy's wide receiver 5 in standard and 6 in PPR. From week 8 forward, he was fantasy's wide receiver 49 standard and 45 PPR. We can listen to interviews with the players and, certainly they were offering up the hamstring issue that got him knocked out of 1 game earlier than, I think around halftime. But he didn't miss any other time, and it wasn't bad enough for him to, sit out, and he didn't really, until the end of the year, didn't rotate. I don't think that was injury related. I don't know. Maybe we will wind up looking back and decide, nope, it was entirely because of injury. Again, I don't know how I would know that. You certainly don't need me for that. What you need me for, you need me on that wall. With receivers, I can watch every target in an hour. I can't watch every route, which is a longer project, and I'm not going to do that. It's very boring. But I did watch every Emeka Egbuka target, 128 of them. Obviously, the production makes it a tale of 2 seasons, and when you go back and watch it all at once, you know this, so you're looking for differences. I think the good news if you're an Egbuka fan, or if you're, an Egbuka fan, or if you're a dynasty owner of Egbuka, I think the good news is that he's really good. I don't think the early part of the year was a fluke. And I honestly don't know if I even think the later part of the year was his fault. And I definitely could not sense from the way he was playing that he was hurt. If he was hurt, I couldn't see it. Obviously, we all know, depth chart-wise, the heavens opened up for Egbuka playing time-wise. You had Chris Godwin not being ready to go to start the season. Godwin comes back week 4 and 5, immediately gets hurt, and misses another 2 months. You had Mike Evans get hurt in week 3, make a cameo in week 7, but get hurt again in that game, and he didn't come back again until week 15. And Jalen McMillan, he was on IR all year. He only came back playing in week 15 as well. And that did leave Egbuka with a lot of responsibilities and a lot of targets, no question about it. But to me, watching this back, it does not feel like, Malik Neighbors gets hurt in the first month and then Wan'Dale Robinson gets 140 targets. Do we think Wan'Dale Robinson is a good little player? We do. Should Wan'Dale Robinson in any world on any NFL team be getting 140 targets? He's just not that good. I think Egbuka is actually really good. The first month of the season, he scored touchdowns. Obviously, that helped his fantasy stats. But he also immediately, obviously, was not, quote-unquote, only a slot player. The Buccaneers would anchor him out at the X plenty of times, and they targeted him out of routes, out of that sort of, anchored sort of position. There were deep looks to him early on, even when Evans was healthy in September. Then week 3 against the Jets, that's the one where Evans gets hurt. Egbuka has a trust shot from Baker Mayfield, a perfect throw. Make note of that because that will not be the case later in the year. And on that throw, an insane one-handed catch from Egbuka. Now, he had a terrible drop in that game, and drops were a problem, no question. But right away, early in his career, we're seeing trust throws going to Emeka Egbuka. Now, week 4 against the Eagles, Quinyon Mitchell ate his lunch during that game. He did have a big, long touchdown against Philly, and we'll take it. But it was a mistake by the safety. It was a blown coverage. Now, the safety did come back and almost make a great play to break it up, and it took good concentration for Egbuka to catch it. But when Philly wanted to erase Egbuka as the number 1 in that game, they put Mitchell on him, and, that's no sin. Quinyon Mitchell is truly awesome. But yeah, Egbuka was not much of a match there, which makes him like 98% of all NFL wideouts. Week 5 against the Seahawks, not for nothing. Buccaneers sure did move the ball and score a bunch of points against Seattle, winning that game. Be interesting to see if the Patriots learned anything from that game this weekend. I think the theme probably early on for Egbuka, and that includes the Seattle game, was he didn't really have to beat a ton of press man coverage in the first couple of months. And when he did, it was Quinyon Mitchell. It was the only game where a defense really gave him that treatment, and he did not. But again, really good player. He certainly got a lot of opportunities in this window when Evans, Godwin, McMillan were out. The emphasis was on him, and it was working. They were winning games. And my feeling, that Seattle game and the few after that, definitely won on some out and up routes. He also seems to fool defensive backs going to the deep post. And when Mayfield was on, the deep post was a sweet connection and really good body control. And he seems like the kind of player who attacks the ball and would have good hands, even though, as I'm going to mention more, he didn't always. Now, week 6 against the Niners, only 2 catches for 24 yards. Buddy, there were a couple of routes where he was wide open deep and the throw was just bad. And then that was the game against the Niners where he hurt hamstring and missed the second half. But he didn't miss any additional time. Week 7, there's a play where he's a great release in the third quarter against the Lions and would have had another long touchdown, except Baker Mayfield triple pumped before throwing it. And there were 3 other deep shots to him in that game because they're trailing. That's the game where Evans came back but was immediately out again. And none of the incompletions on those deep balls were on Egbuka. This was Baker Mayfield, including one in the end zone that should have been a touchdown. I felt like from that point forward, Mayfield was just hard to know, getting sped up, not looking as good, not trusting his offensive line. And you could tell, there started to be a very frustrated pass offense. Week 8, up 17-3 on the Saints. Egbuka had a great deep route. And again, Mayfield hitches and throws it too late, or that would have been a long touchdown. His week 10 touchdown against the Patriots, that wasn't blown coverage. But later in that game, he beat Christian Gonzalez in the red zone. Really great route. And that would have been a second touchdown. And that's not on Mayfield. That was a drop, just a flat out drop, or it's a score. Now, 6 drops on the season's not good. People are killing Brian Thomas for his hands. That's the same number of drops that Brian Thomas had, 6, albeit Thomas did it in 14 games, Egbuka in 17, but absolutely something he needs to clean up. Week 12 against the Rams, another one where Egbuka roasts Kobe Durant, but the throw is late and it's underthrown, or a combination of both, and Durant makes it back and makes a hero diving play and knocks it away, and then Tampa's getting killed in that game. The last 4 targets for Egbuka in that game are from Teddy Bridgewater. And then I think that one was the one Godwin came back, and it took him a game or two to get back up to speed. But, the problem was that Tampa just started losing a million games. And certainly, if you're observing this, you would say Egbuka's role got more rotational. I do not think it was any kind of a benching. But there just started to be more healthy guys, and I think because they were losing, they were searching. They were trying stuff. They were hoping to stop the losing streak. And the bottom dropped out. The second Saints game in December, another loss. It's raining. Egbuka runs a double move in close. He's wide open. He made the defensive back fall down. And sure, I would love Egbuka to catch a high ball there because, a receiver will tell you, usually if they can touch it, they want to be able to catch it. But he wasn't ruled for a drop on that play that would have tied the game because the throw was bad. It was too high. It's an easy throw, just a bad throw. And I think Baker Mayfield was actively bad in the second half of last year. He supposedly sprained his throwing shoulder against the Rams and played through it. Except watching this, it feels like he missed a lot of throws before then, so I guess I just don't know. But what I see in Egbuka overall, I think he's an all-field player. I think he does some of that middle-of-the-field stuff that we like Chris Godwin for, and Godwin certainly will also go deep against zone coverage down the middle. Egbuka can do that, and I think maybe more also against man coverage. I come away thinking that first half production of the season was pretty good, pretty real, not feeling like it was solely a result of the depth chart. And I think there might be potential for 2026 fantasy value on him because, the temptation might be to only talk about, he was going up against Sterling Shepard. And so, of course, he was going to get a lot of targets and they won't center on him next year. I do not think he's fake. We're all going to wait and find out about Mike Evans, currently unsigned, unknown whether he wants to come back, if the Buccaneers would pay to keep him because they would have to pay a 1-year deal, probably be a lot. And, I think Chris Godwin's not going anywhere with the contract that he signed last summer, but this might be his final year because he's out of guaranteed money. Jalen McMillan's an interesting player. He had a couple of pop plays when he came back in December as they were kind of casting around for solutions. I think Egbuka, maybe not like a total freak after the catch, not like a unbelievable, Antonio Brown phylum kind of player where he's just open because he's so quick coming out of a break. He's good. He's not good like that. As the year went on and as the team got more frustrated, I felt like I saw Egbuka running his routes like faster and harder. And I saw speed toward the end of the year when he wasn't producing that I didn't, or maybe decisiveness that I didn't see at the beginning when he was producing. I think he's got moves. If Evans is back, it's a logjam. It is. And if it's a logjam, everyone's price is going to get suppressed, and maybe that'll be a good thing. But having done this last night, not knowing for sure, I didn't have a pre-existing conception. Maybe I was going to come away saying, I don't think he's really all that great. This is Wan'Dale stuff. I do not feel that way. I think Egbuka is an NFL team's good number one weapon. I can almost guarantee that he'll be the highest ranked Tampa receiver on my board this summer. We are sponsored by Leesa, the makers of my mattress. I love my bed so much, and I really do sleep on a Leesa, and I have for the better part of a decade. I sleep wonderfully on it, and they have grown so much. They have several different styles of mattresses for different types of sleepers. If you've been putting off getting a new mattress, but maybe you haven't been sleeping great, or you've been waking up stiff and sore, let me just plant the bug. Check out Leesa. They've been such a loyal sponsor of ours, and they have really good deals, including you can get a mattress delivered direct to your door and sleep on it for 4 months. And if you don't love it, let them know, and they'll refund you, and they'll come pick it up. No questions asked. Now, mattresses are very personal things, so getting 4 months to test drive one is awesome. And it is Leesa's President's Day early access sale right now. If you go to leesa.com, you'll get 25% off all mattresses. And if you check out using the code Harris, that's another $50 off the top as well. If it's time for 25% off a new mattress, leesa.com. And for an extra $50 off, use that code Harris.
Today's guest.
And today's guest, it's Matt Landis. You can find him all over social media. Just look up Matt Landis. He is the co-host of the Prime Suspects show, the podcast. New episodes that come out on Monday. It's a handicapping show. Look up Prime Suspects. I also pitched you, Matt, as the Props and Hops host, but that show is on hiatus at the moment. But coming back soon. I know lots of listeners have probably subscribed to that one, but they hear you every year this time, introducing me to what's going on with the handicapping world in the Super Bowl. I appreciate you doing it again this year. Hi.
Hi, Chris. I appreciate you having me back. It is great to be back aboard the yacht for what's becoming one of my favorite annual traditions. I will say to the listeners, the yacht could use a little upkeep. There's a possum here, a tapeworm there, but it could be worse. You could live on land without a team to cheer for in the Super Bowl like the rest of us, yet here you are, living the life in your footy pajamas, and I appreciate you letting me crash the party, especially because when it comes to this game, we might not be, as you love to say, in alignment.
In other words, you just took a big plane trip and listened to some of my recent shows.
I had listened to every show from day one going back years, and then definitely caught up on some recent episodes as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time, having just jumped off a plane from the cold weather. Now you're here in glorious Los Angeles. And I talked with Barons on the Monday show that you probably heard, where we talked about the football side of it, and we both kind of made our stab in the dark, point spread picks, and that was kind of it. And I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with what I say, and we might not be in alignment. But let's just talk about the line for Patriots Seahawks in general. Right after the championship games, I think the very opening line was 3.5. And we were told, in fact, since the Patriots had won earlier, that no matter who won between the Rams and the Seahawks, the opening line was going to be 3.5. But it went to 4.5 fast. It actually went to 4.5 so fast that I thought over these last, whatever it's been, like more than 10 days, that we might jump higher. And I think maybe the juice has jumped a little bit, but the number stayed pretty calm at 4.5. Does that feel like the right line to you?
At this point, it kind of does. And it's funny, when we talk about spread movement since the line opened, I guess it depends on the source, because as you touched on when mentioning prime suspects, and thank you for that plug off the top, I host a podcast featuring one person who is a head of risk management for a sharp sportsbook, and he said it got as high as 5.5 before settling back down at 4.5. So this has been a really interesting market, kind of some dead numbers, so maybe not interesting in that sense. But it seems like a case where a lot of the recreational money, at least according to my colleague on the Prime Suspects podcast, has been on the Patriots. But sharper money has been on Seattle. Seems like maybe a rare Super Bowl split where the underdog is the public side, at least at some sports books.
Yeah, some sports books. I did some research just to talk to you, and I looked up, and it said that 70% of public bets are on Seattle. But I guess public bets doesn't necessarily mean the same thing that you just said. In other words, public bets isn't all non-sharp bets. Is that right?
Yeah, and I guess with a number like that, it makes sense with the Seahawks as a clear favorite. That could be an easy side to back. Also, just eyeballing the teams on Conference Championship Sunday. But I also think it's about impossible to get a true read on public action across all books, regulated, offshore, and all that. So it might just be very source dependent, but I could very much believe that there's a big chunk of people who just saw these teams play and have a clear sense of which team might be the better one by a decent margin.
Right. So, I mean, we did this show, you and I, last year, and I said the same thing. I think it was Chiefs 1.5 over the Eagles. And I said the same thing, and it probably what you just said, which is right, and I'm trying to be reductive. You're the one who knows this industry. I really don't. That was Philly as a slight dog, and what I said to you on that show last year was, wow, the public seems to be, in terms of total number of bets, if not the total money, more on the Eagles. Whatever. Like, I think you're right, the point being that, okay, great, one book might have it this way, another might have it another. It's a much more atomized market than it ever used to be. One thing that, statistically, whether it means anything for this game, I don't know, but statistically, Super Bowl favorites have not tended to cover, and it's been that way for, that's a good, the 2000s anyway.
Yeah, I feel like that's an interesting observation, and underdogs have had some success in recent history. I'm not sure what to make of it. An initial thought is that I think in 6 of the last 7 Super Bowls, the spread has been a field goal or less. So we're talking virtual toss-up games, and that leaves a much more narrow window for the winner not to cover the game. So if we've got a tight spread, not a huge surprise, whichever team wins. And if it's been some short underdogs, then of course they're also covering. So maybe small sample size, but I'm really not sure. This is interesting in that it's one of the first times in several years that we've had a much more clear-cut favorite heading into the game.
I guess that's right, but I mean, it's all that. Yes, the answer is small sample size. The answer is, of course, that doesn't really affect anything. The only way you can talk yourself into it affecting things if you say the handle is so much larger on the Super Bowl than any other game that you get dumber money, and dumber money just is like, that team's better, and I'm going to root for them because they're better, and they don't think point spread, or they can't make themselves envision a world where the Seahawks win by 3. If they're going to win, it's going to be by a touchdown, and that's. That and it goes. So, like, the little piece of research I saw about spreads of 4.5 points or more in the Super Bowl, the underdog is 12-2-2 against the spread.
Yeah, I feel conflicted on this one. On one hand, I really hear you that generally people do tend to gravitate toward extreme ends of the
Favorites.
spectrum when placing
Yeah.
Super Bowl wagers. If
Yeah.
you're a fan or better supporting the underdog, the money line is really enticing. Fans want to see their team win outright. Bettors want the bigger payout of a money line relative to the point spread with an underdog.
Right.
And then if you're a fan of the team that's favored, or if you're betting the favorite, you might be more inclined to lay the points. In the case of people looking to back Seattle here, I can see why it's easier to swallow 4.5 points against the spread than to lay almost 2.5 to 1 on the money line. So again, with clear favorites like we have this year, I do feel like the point spread could be more likely to come into play. An example that comes into mind would be, I think, the last Super Bowl favorite of more than a field goal, the Rams -4-ish over the Bengals in Super Bowl 56. To your point
Not
of a team
cover.
winning a
Yeah.
Super Bowl by 3 as a clear favorite, the Rams
Yeah.
won that game by 3, so they get the outright win, but the Bengals get the cover. In terms of the number getting really carried away, that's where I'm inclined to push back a bit, thinking the Super Bowl point spread, at least in theory, should be about as efficient as any betting market is going to get. Books are taking six figures, if not seven, on this game. So that tells you how confident they are and the efficiency of their line. That tells me that people can only get so carried away, even with bigger favorites, because if the spread then gets carried away, there are a lot of sharp bettors getting higher limits in this game than anything else, and they can hit
Yeah.
that spread back into shape in a hurry.
Yeah, it's a good point. It should be a fairly efficient market. The only thing I'll say, the only, like I said, the rationale that I can come up with for why bigger favorites in the Super Bowl have tended not to cover is that people like to back the winner, and so they think the bigger favorite is going to be the winner. But that would be not making it a very efficient market. And you're right, like having DraftKings and other online sports books only makes it more efficient. Like that doesn't make it, having more people does not make it less efficient. That's not the way it works. But I'll just go through. We had 2016, we had Panthers -5. They lost outright. 2013, we had 49ers 4.5. They lost outright. Colts 2010, 5-point underdog, lost outright. Steelers 7-point in 2009. They won but didn't cover. Patriots -12. Don't talk to me about that one. 2008 against
Might
the
want to
Giants.
skip a couple of these Patriots ones.
That's the only one. The last team to be favored by 4.5 or more to cover is the Colts in 2007 against the Bears. And but I think I've now gone on, and historic data would, I think, tell you that bigger underdogs tend to cover in the Super Bowl. And then I would probably take a step back and say what you said at the very beginning is correct. It's a small sample size, and we should just move on because it might mean absolutely nothing. It comes down to who's better on the field. All that said, given that you said we're not in alignment, it strikes me that you're on the favorite side here.
Yeah, if I had to make a bet, that's where I would land. But it's such an interesting case because I just mentioned the Super Bowl being about as efficient as any betting market's going to get. I feel like this might be relatively high variance for a Super Bowl setting. I kind of had two X factors for these teams heading into the playoffs. For New England, the obvious question to many, how good are they really based on strength of schedule? And for Seattle, can Sam Darnold ever come through when it matters most? I feel like one of these questions may have been answered with Darnold turning in arguably the best game of his career in the biggest game of his career to date against the Rams defense that had owned him to the tune of 6 interceptions in 2 regular season games. So maybe Darnold has answered the bell, but I'm still not sure how much to weigh what New England does well, including, to give them credit, very clean with the fundamentals, not self-destructing. I feel like that's very underrated in an NFL team. Also not sure how much to weigh the schedule here. So, Chris, I'd be curious just to maybe belabor the point a bit based on some of your recent shows, but to have this conversation with you, what did you make of the Patriots' true talent level entering the playoffs, and how has that changed over the past 3 games?
Yeah, I think, you heard the show. I have people who don't subscribe to the Yacht Club. I pick the Patriots. I'll take the points. I maybe think Seattle wins a close game, but I like a close game. That comes down to Darnold spitting the bit versus Maye looking better. but then he's looked in these past 3 games against a defense that's, basically we can pick nits, but it's basically as good a defense as they've played. They've all been good. This is another good one. I don't think my assessment of the talent level of the Patriots has really changed all that much. The Milton Williams factor, him being back and healthy again, being next to Christian Barmore, like there aren't too many matchups against the Seattle defensive tackles where you'd take somebody else. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 really good defensive tackles on Seattle, and I would take New England's. And I might argue that I would take the New England defense overall against Seattle's defense. I think there's been a rush to kind of retrofit the Seahawks as well. It turned out all along this was the elite team. And it's really hard for me to see that when I saw Sam Darnold fumble 13 times or whatever it was, when I saw them. I just watched film for Emeka Egbuka earlier in the show, talked about it, and I rewatched a bunch of the plays from the Tampa game when Tampa was offense was humming and they went straight through that defense. I am I'm scared of the Patriots' left side of the offensive line. I'm scared that Maye is either, not as good as we thought or somewhat injured because he didn't throw the ball well in the first half of the Broncos game. Otherwise, it feels like they kind of are who I thought they were. And like, I didn't think at the beginning of the season, but like basically if people were listening along with the podcast along the way, but right around when they went to Tampa and won that game, I basically was like, I give up. Okay. I've been doubting them. The stupid footy pajamas, I've been doubting them, and now I just sort of have to give in. Are they a super elite team? No, but like, wasn't that what everybody was saying all year, that the NFL got really flat this year, that the super quarterbacks had taken a step back or had been injured or whatever, and there just wasn't a great team this year? And it's weird to me that now suddenly people are like, no, it was Seattle.
Yeah, to your point, I'll be one of the least surprised people if Darnold has one of those games where he turns the ball over multiple times and the Patriots play a clean, if unspectacular game and end up winning it. But during the NFC title game, I had a flashback. I felt like I was watching a de facto Super Bowl, if you will, between the 2 best teams in the league. And it reminded me of the NBA Western Conference Finals during a Lakers three-peat that was glorious for me as a Lakers fan. From 99-2000 to 2001-02, I think they had 7-game series against the Blazers and the Kings to get a couple of those conference titles, and they lost 3 games total in 3 finals series wins. So maybe this is just a false parallel coming to mind for me, but that's what has me leaning Seattle's way. Where it nets out, I would say, given the variance that I can see on both sides here, what's Darnold going to do? How good are the Patriots really? How healthy is Maye? I would consider alt lines looking at this spread. Seattle, you could lay 10.5 plus 187 at DraftKings. I've seen as high as plus 220 at parts unknown, let's call it. And with New England, if I wanted to back the Patriots, I'd consider laying 3.5. You could get plus 278 at DraftKings. I've seen that as high as plus 330 elsewhere. So just a slight lean for me, but I don't think I'll be surprised by any outcome. I guess gun to head, I would project something like Seahawks 24, Patriots 17.
A quick break. Let me thank Blue Land for being a great sponsor these past couple of years, and also for introducing me to what they do. If you've ever felt weird about how much plastic you throw away in your home cleaning supplies, like hand soap dispensers, cleaning bottles, all those plastic pods that we put in dishwashers or the laundry, well, Blue Land has been an awesome change for me here aboard the yacht. Wonderful cleaning supplies. They hold up to the highest cradle-to-cradle standards, safe for you and kids and pets and plants. And from cleaning sprays to toilet bowl cleaner to dishwasher and laundry detergent and hand soap, you get one forever bottle, and then you get refills in tablet form. I've been using the Blue Land tablets in my dishwasher and laundry for a couple of years now, and the clean is great and no microplastics. And you also get tablets for soap and for cleaning spray. You just add water and you throw away so much less plastic. It's a small change that'll get microplastics out of your home, and you'll be throwing away less plastic too. Check it out, blueland.com/Harris to get 15% off your first order. This is a change that you can make right now. 15% off at blueland.com/Harris, blueland.com/Harris. Okay, we're back with Matt, and we are talking about the Super Bowl from a handicapping perspective. I know you're making a show with some wise guys, as it were, Matt. We've talked so much about the Patriots' schedule, and I know so much of how folks in the handicapping industry, it's so data driven that they try not to let their eyeballs. I don't think that's entirely true, but I think it's very data driven, put it that way. Mm-hmm. When you have as an outlier a season as the Patriots with, a historically easy schedule, and I don't know that the metrics have a way to account for it. Like these models are built not for the 99th percentile. Do your friends who you're doing podcasts with and just in the industry, I keep going back to DVOA. Like DVOA has a big schedule component, and there's just no way for DVOA to ever elevate a team that has a really truly easy schedule, because it's always then they go on to weighted DVOA, and that's like trying to throw away the early games. Unfortunately, the Patriots schedule is easy the whole way through. Do they talk at all about the data not being able to account for this easy of a schedule?
Yeah, and to that I would say the notion has come up a few times with people I respect that two things can be true at the same time, where, the schedule was very favorable and they've been a damn good team against that schedule. I mean, they're not skating by here, pulling out last second turnovers or long field goals to squeak by bad teams. There has been a lot of domination. So that's where, to your earlier point about people in some cases now seemingly retrofitting a narrative with Seattle, I think no matter how this game goes, if the Seahawks win, it's going to be, the Patriots were a paper tiger the whole way. They never played anybody. They finally did, and they got beat. Or, we told you the schedule wasn't the issue. They were really good this whole time, and now nobody can disprove it because they got past Seattle. I just feel like there's going to be that hindsight no matter how this game shakes out. I tend to fall somewhere in the middle where I won't be surprised with any outcome in this game. And based on conversations with people I respect, it's one of those cases where there's just some nuance, and there's not going to be a way to perfectly quantify it. A complete NFL season is still an inherently small sample size, and that's what makes betting on this stuff so fascinating, is that nobody has the answer to the test. We're all just trying to outdo one another because it's going to be impossible for anybody individually to get that perfect score of 100%.
Right, definitely. I just wondered whether when the machine, you push the button, the machine spits out 4.5, anybody ever goes, maybe it should be 3, because maybe the machine just can't account for a schedule that's this easy. I guess there's no way to really know that, but it strikes me that just mathematically it's hard to account for the easiest percentile, for the 1/100th of a percentile. Yeah.
And I think that's what got me looking more at alt lines if I were to bet this against the spread. If you just think the Patriots schedule is a joke and no quantitative metrics are accounting for it properly, lay more than 4.5 with Seattle and take the better payout. If you think the Patriots are legit and they're being sold short because this narrative is BS, lay some points with the Patriots, take a nice plus money payout, and maybe this is one of those Super Bowls where, as efficient as the market tends to be, these are two teams where there are much bigger unknowns than we typically see at this stage of the season.
Yeah, because it feels like a year where there were just no flawless teams. There were no even close to flawless teams. Like, don't we feel like both the Eagles and the Chiefs would probably kick these teams' butt? The Eagles and Chiefs from last year feel like a higher quality of team. Maybe that's wrong. But that's what it feels like to me. Do you have a strong take on the total as of our talking? It's DraftKings something like 45.5.
Yeah, I don't have a firm grasp on the total here. I think similar to the side, I'd consider alt lines given the perceived high degree of variance. 45.5 at DraftKings. If I were sold more on both offenses than defenses and not concerned about injuries to either quarterback, you could look at something like over 51.5, taking plus 175. Or if you're higher on these defenses, or maybe you are concerned about one or both quarterbacks from an injury standpoint, also the potential for some conservative approaches by both coaches, a lot of pressure on the Super Bowl stage, maybe you want to look at something like under 38.5, taking plus 195. So this market's efficient enough. I will not be surprised if it lands on Seahawks in the range of 4 or 5, total in the mid 40s, but I just can't fault anybody for looking to take some bigger swings, giving a lot of bigger question marks in this matchup.
All right, so then we have some props, and the props are very fun. And I'll ask you for some favorite props. Of course, we encourage people to do their props live on DraftKings because they're a great sponsor of the show. They actually have a thing going during the Super Bowl, which is if you get the DraftKings Sportsbook app, of course, we want you to sign up using the code Harris. If you opt in, you get a promo token. Place a live bet of $1 or more on anything on the Super Bowl, and you're automatically entered. So basically just every live bet that you do throughout the game, you get another entry. And so that's just stacking entries that they're randomly going to pick winners from all of these many, many bets that are going to be going on all day on Sunday. And then once the game is over, they're going to randomly select more than 100,000 winners. And some of them are going to be big prizes, some will be little prizes, but it's going to add up to over $5 million in prizes. And so, yeah, we actually, why don't I'll play the disclaimer right now just so we have that played.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, pass-through of per-wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
So if people wanted to live bet this thing and they have the DraftKings app, they sign up with the code Harris, of course. Do you have props for this game that you think have more edge than we talked about with the team or the point total?
Yeah, thankfully with a game like this, there are so many props. So that's where I think a lot of the edges are there to be had. And I'd like to lead off by mentioning that to me, step one is always getting clear on your goal when it comes to why you're betting on Super Bowl props. For a lot of people, it's probably just to be entertained. And if you're betting within your limits, then no harm done. All good as far as that goes. If you're looking for edges, then digging through prop venues can be where a lot of that plus EV lies. And for me, the starting point would be one that I hope won't become my last point on this show if you want to cut me off after I say this, but Drake Maye rushing yards under. I'm seeing that at 38.5 minus 115 at DraftKings. I feel like that may be playable all the way down to 35.5, but we're probably not going to get there. No rush to bet this one because I think some recreational money continues to come in on the over and we might see an even better price closer to kickoff. But this one's been a really volatile market. It's pretty interesting to have heard that DraftKings opened this line at about 29.5, and it got as high as 40.5 before coming back down. So wow. I guess if you're booking this at DraftKings, you're just hoping that Maye doesn't land in the 30s and you're paying out both sides here. But I do understand why there was a lot of initial interest in the over, aside from the pretty low number. Probably the single biggest pitfall looking at the under here is the must-win element. In do-or-die settings, quarterbacks tend to be much more aggressive running. And we've seen this with Maye. 65 yards running against the Broncos in the AFC Championship game. 66 yards just a couple weeks before that against the Chargers in the wild card round. I do, though, feel like a few positives outweigh it, thinking about the matchup, questions about Maye's health, and maybe a bit of recency bias. The matchup here leads me right to what I presume to be the game plan for the Seahawks defense. And Chris, maybe I'm thinking this is too obvious, but what has been the best part, if not the only good part, about the Patriots offense so far in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, Drake Maye running.
Cool. All right. You said it, not just me. So with that, I feel like it's got to be the first thing Seattle's going to scheme to shut down. And maybe I'm guilty of retrofitting the narrative, as you say. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I like it. I don't honestly have a sense of what that line number even should be. The fact that it moved that much is crazy. That's such a wonderful point by you. I never would have known that had you not brought that up. The only thing I'll say is that the Seahawks are going to play a lot of zone. Mm-hmm. And that's sometimes, of course, if it's man under zone, then Drake Maye won't run. But there's a chance for some running against zone. But I like it. Do you have another prop?
Yeah, this one, let's have some fun with it.
Sure.
Risking a little to win a lot, something I don't do a lot of, but I wanted to come with something creative for this show, and I figure we can call this one the Footy Pajamas Double-Double Same Game Parlay. Sam Darnold to throw at least 2 interceptions, and Rhamondre Stevenson to score at least 2 touchdowns, 28-1 at DraftKings. The obvious angle here to me is that we've got some correlation. A bad Darnold game would lead to a favorable game state for New England, and that could translate to a bigger than usual workload for Stevenson. I am rooting for Darnold, but historically, as we've touched on, he's no stranger to bad showings in big games, and he does have 3 multi-interception games this season. And Stevenson has recently been a workhorse, but that wasn't the case for much of the season, and he still posted 3 multi-touchdown games in his own right. I also like the fact that he's got a multi-dimensional skill set, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him score 1 touchdown rushing and another 1 receiving. This is very much in the spirit of fun, no pretense of a big edge, but I think enough correlation to at least be worth entertaining. Although, Chris, again, as the resident Patriots expert here, what are your thoughts on Stevenson continuing to dominate the New England backfield versus what I'm picking up on is a pretty popular sentiment that TreVeyon Henderson reemerges in the Super Bowl?
I don't see any reason why that would be the case. Stevenson was absolute nails in pass protection against good defenses, and they don't trust TreVeyon yet. He hasn't proved. It's funny. I mean, I've said it a million times on the show, but like he came out of college with this. Well, the one thing we know he can do is pass protect, and he's been awful at it. I don't think you're going to see that much TreVeyon, to be honest. I mean, he can hit home runs. He still might have. Maybe he has great value as Super Bowl MVP because he has 2 80-yard touchdown runs. It's very possible, but I think Stevenson's going to way outsnap him. I don't see any reason why they'd change their minds. I mean, Henderson wasn't hurt. They just didn't use him.
If anything, if I'm recalling correctly, Stevenson had an eye injury against Houston, so the full game stats would have been misleading in terms of the share probably being even more lopsided in Stevenson's favor had he not gotten something in his eye.
Yeah, I mean, fool us all. They can come out doing whatever they want, and Henderson obviously hits home runs, and I'm rooting for the Patriots. I want him to hit home runs. That would be great, but like if you're playing DFS, I would take Stevenson over Henderson. That's what I would say. So how about one more on the other, going in the other direction, kind of like a more like put money in the bank, a little less risky, where you feel like the return is safer.
Yeah, this is probably where we get into acid reflux territory for a lot of listeners, but if for whatever reason is my comfort zone. Mack Hollins under 2.5 receptions, seeing -158 at DraftKings. And if I'm going to be laying that kind of lumber, I want to know it's rooted in a process I can trust. And transparently, there's nobody I trust with props more than a pro bettor who goes by the moniker Hitman. He made this his play on yesterday's Forward Progress Super Bowl props extravaganza. At the time, it was -140. So yeah, this line has moved as it should when a respected bettor makes his opinion known. But I still see value at DraftKings' price because it's already north of -165 at other books, and I wouldn't want to lay more than that on this bet. Okay. A little bit of the handicap, it starts with Seattle's defense excelling against receivers like Hollins. They tend to funnel a lot of targets to running backs and tight ends in the underneath area. Hollins, a bit more of a deep threat, that could be clashing with the strength of the Seattle defense. And then the price here also reflecting a lot of season-long usage. The Patriots were running a pretty heavy rotation at receiver for most of the season. We saw a healthy dose of Hollins along the way. But in the playoffs, I think of another NBA parallel, load management pretty much coming off the table. Stephon Diggs getting a lot more playing time, Kayshon Boutte emerging, and Hollins being more of a distant wide receiver 3. So not the most comfortable bet to make, laying -158, but I feel like we've got a better chance than those odds would imply that Hollins comes in under 2.5 receptions.
Okay. Yeah, he's been. I think I'm realizing that Mack Hollins is the kind of guy you like to have on your team because he made a couple of big catches in that Broncos game right before it started snowing. One of them was scary. He almost handed it to the defense, but how could you argue he's a high volume guy? He's just not. So I know what you mean when you bet the under on something that's a low total. You go, oh come on, man. All it really takes is one, and you're screwed. But I'm going to put these 3 props into the show notes so that people can refer to them if they would like to do the fun DraftKings thing that I mentioned, where you just opt in, get a promo token, you can make a dollar bet. Just make dollar bets. Make them throughout the day. Just make a bunch of dollar bets through the game live, and you'll be entered. For each one, you're entered into to win prizes of DraftKings, which is pretty fun. All right, Matthew. Well, I hope you're wrong, because it would be fun for me if the Patriots win. But either way, I try to look at this stuff. I said with Barron's on Monday, I try to look at this stuff dispassionately. I think you know me long enough and well enough to know that I'm not really the trash talker for my own team. Usually it's the opposite. I usually trash talk about my own team.
Right. Yeah, I feel like this is interesting because that would be exactly how I feel about my teams as well. And yet here we are, you the Patriots fan, siding with them. I'm also trying to look at this as objectively as possible. Again, no surprise to me if New England wins this game, but go figure, the team with the USC quarterback, 3 USC defensive linemen, and my allegiance is with the Seahawks. We say we're trying to be objective, but I guess the audience can maybe read between the lines a little bit.
You're a Charger fan. Get off my lawn. I know you. I know your deal. Well, I appreciate you doing this again this year. What a fun time to have you on. Follow Matt on social media if you'd like. Just look him up. Landes is his last name. And listen to. Are you guys going to do a recap show on Monday?
Yeah, prime suspects. We all 3 of us picked the Seahawks. Again, with 24-17 as my projected final, I was the friendliest to the Patriots. So this is either going to be a bloodbath hangover episode or a little bit of basking in the afterglow.
All right. Prime Suspect is the podcast, and give it a listen. They'll give you some good advice. Obviously, we want to take it easy with the betting, but, a dollar here, a dollar there is pretty fun. Thanks for doing it, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks as always, Chris.
And thank you so much for listening. Let me also thank the 3 sponsors that made the show possible today. If you can see your way through to picking one to give a little support to, I'd appreciate it. We had Wild Grain, we had Blue Land, and we had Lisa. You can find information about those sponsors in today's show notes. All the current sponsors are listed at harrisfootball.com. If you have the DraftKings Sportsbook app, if you don't, sign up with the code Harris, but it is a fun thing. Like, make a bunch of $1 live bets and you'll get entered into a drawing. And of course, there are going to be millions upon millions of entries, but they're going to give away a bunch. So it's worth doing if you're going to be doing that anyway. That's going to do it for this episode and for the Thursday show for the next month or so. I'm going to be back in exactly 4 weeks on this side of things, and that's when we'll start talking about NFL free agency. We'll see what kind of news that we know before free agency, and then we'll talk about what happens that first week of free agency. For those of you who'd like to join the Yacht Club or who are already in the Yacht Club, the shows will continue early in the week. This coming Monday, it'll be a Super Bowl review, and we'll do another Film Futures on a young player. If you're in the Yacht Club, really join the Discord. It's super easy. I know it sounds weird, but it's just a message board, and we're going to ask folks in there the players they'd like to hear about when we do Film Futures or whatever it's called, which we're going to continue to do with Andy over the next month. So get on in there and give us your suggestions for players you'd like to hear us talk about. Coming up throughout February, we've got I think we're going to do a segment on the Olympic hockey because I'm really into the Olympic hockey. We're definitely going to do a segment with Danny Wrench from chess.com about his book and his life. He's a friend of mine, and it's quite a story. So a bunch of other stuff planned too. We'd love it to have your support. $5 a month on the Yacht Club. Otherwise, that's it. You're going to have to wait a month to hear from me. Of course, I'll be on social media stressing out over the Super Bowl, and we'll all convene back here again in March. Until then, thanks again so much for listening. Your hat is awesome. You're awesome for wearing it. I will talk to you next time.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The closing theme is Say Yes by The Wellspring. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.